Hello everyone. Today we will be sketching this hair dryer, and this is going to be similar to electric kettle that we sketched last week. And basically, it will have this cylindrical form and also a rectilinear form combined. But this time, everything is horizontal instead of vertical. And other difference is the proportion. But the logic behind combining this rectangular shape with the cylindrical form is going to be the same. Construction-wise, it's going to be pretty similar. As I said, only small details such as those chamfers, radiuses, or proportions are going to be different. And apart from that, material-wise, rendering-wise, we still going to use the same plastic color. This one is E41 or YG91. And in addition to that, this time we will add metal parts, and it's going to be reflective metal. It's not going to be matte metal, it's going to be polished. So it's going to reflect the sky and the shadow a bit. Apart from that, same as the electric kettle, we will have the button and the cord. We're going to use the same techniques. Maybe the mesh part, the air vent part is going to be different. So, before we start, I'm going to talk about, go over the things about how to combine these two different shapes. The handle part and the main cylindrical form, the body part, and I will explain about how to construct that. But before we start, decide your proportions as we always do with the other sketches. So in this case, the body part is 3 units, the handle is 2 units. So, and try to reflect those proportions on to your drawing. And moreover, before you start sketching rendering, test your colors. Make sure that you're using the right underlay color, otherwise it might ruin the beauty of your drawing. Alright, so we will start with constructing the overall form. It's going to be an exercise, you don't have to do this, but if you can't remember from PD 223, it will be an exercise, warm-up exercise for us. So when we're sketching cylindrical forms, what we do is we draw the center axis and make sure that your center axis is straight. That is why don't use your wrist, just use your arm. And afterwards, decide the height of your cylinder. Let's say the top point is going to be over here. Don't decide the width yet, just draw a nice straight line that is perpendicular to the center axis. And then decide the height, which is going to be down here. Now we can decide the width of our cylinder. And if possible, try to get it symmetrical. Sometimes what I do is I use the cap as a reference and check if they're even. And afterwards, we're going to place our ellipses. Decide if you're too close to the top edge, top surface or not, or way above. If you're way above the top surface, which means you will be seeing more of that top surface, and therefore the ellipse will appear wider. But if you're closer to that eye level, that top of that top surface, then you will be seeing it as a small line, a very narrow ellipse. So I'm guessing that, I'm assuming that I will be seeing the top part a bit more. So it's going to be a wider ellipse. So I always start with the top ellipse, not the bottom one. And first, I go over that area to see if that's going to be the right size. And then once I'm satisfied, I'm putting the pen and drawing the line. So that's how wide it's going to look. And at the bottom, it's going to have the same width. What we can do is we can just get the footprint of that dot. This time, the bottom ellipse is going to be wider than this one. Now I'm only applying pressure at the bottom of it, not at the top, because the back line is not going to be visible. And then I can add the line weight. All right. So in the next step, what we did with the kettle is we decided the angle of the handle. So we can use that center point as a reference, and we can decide which direction it's going to face. Let's say this time it's facing left-hand side. And we are simply drawing a straight line going through that center point. But keep it long again. And always when you're drawing, look at the dot that you're drawing at. Okay, that will be your target point. Do not look at the tip of your pen, just look at that target point and then draw a straight, nice line. So now we have our intersecting point. This is where my handle will be touching my electric kettle. And then afterwards, I can decide the thickness of the handle. Again, I'm trying to keep it symmetrical as much as possible. Because of the perspective convergence, this gap over here is going to be slightly wider than that one, but slightly. If you can't get it right, just at least try to get it symmetrical. But definitely this gap is not going to be wider than this one down here. So now I have those two other intersecting points, and that's where my handle is touching my electric kettle. All right. And then afterwards, I'm going to cut this line over here. And then I'm going to draw two vertical lines connecting those corners. All right. So using these points, I will draw more vertical lines and find the edge that is touching my container. And then afterwards, I can decide the thickness of the handle. And basically, it's going to be parallel to that line. And then I'm going to decide the thickness of my handle on this axis. And the bottom edge, the length. So it's all going to be parallel to that line. And then this bottom edge is going to be parallel to that top edge. What I'm doing is I'm just copying that angle by moving my arm on top of it and then applying down here. Okay, so as you can see, that will be the edge. And this is that touching surface, touching edge. And afterwards, you can add some details, such as you can round those handle, the bottom part, decide the size of the radius, and then you can curve those edges, corners. And if you need the spout part, it's going to be on the opposite side of this handle, which means it's going to be here. Again, I'm using the perspective convergence, so this is going to be wider than this one. And deciding the peak point of my spout part, and then combining them. Again, I can add those radiuses and other details. Okay. All right, so now we're going to apply the same technique, this time on a horizontal cylinder. As we did with this one, we always start with the center axis of the cylinder. So let's say my ellipse is my cylinder is going to be facing this direction. Okay, so keep the line straight, not curved. Mine is kind of slightly curved. And afterwards, decide the width of your cylinder, actually the length of your cylinder, and try to keep it perpendicular. So they have to be 90 degrees. So if you put a paper, it should be 90 degrees. And maybe I can fix that center axis. So now it's 90 degrees. And afterwards, we're going to decide the width of our cylinder. Okay, so this is the most important part. Make sure that the width of your cylinder is perpendicular to that center axis. It's not going to be that way. It's going to be that direction diagonal, perpendicular to that one, 90 degrees. And same as what we did here, the ellipses that are closer to our eye level will be appearing much smaller, and the ellipses that are further away from our eye will appear much wider. In this case, I'm sitting right here, so this part of my cylinder is closer to my eye, and which means this part is going to appear narrow, and this part is going to appear wider. And let's place our ellipse, and then decide how much you're going to see that surface. Are you too close to it, or kind of further away from it? So I'm guessing that I'm about the same as this one, about that much. And I'm putting my ellipse there. It's going to be the same width. And this time this bottom one is going to be wider than this top one. Okay, so that's how my ellipse will appear. And as you can see, if I put it vertical, it's going to be same as that one. Okay, now I'm going to decide the direction of my handle. So it's going to be parallel to my table, that flat surface. And let's say it's going through this point and straight out here. So it should go from that center line, center point, to that direction. Then in the next step, I'm deciding the width of my handle. So it's going to be that wide, and it's going to be parallel to that line. Okay. All right, so now I have this intersecting point, and using that intersecting point, I can find where that touching edge is going to be. And then I can decide the length of my cylinder based on that. So when you're deciding your length of your handle, do not take this line as a reference. It should be that intersecting point. So my handle will appear that long. Okay. And then in the next step, I will decide the height, the width of it. So it's going to be about that thick. And next is just drawing a bunch of parallel lines. And then drawing vertical lines from here, draw more parallel lines to that side, and then find that point and draw vertical line. So it's going to be perfectly vertical. And from here, draw a line till you touch this line over here. Actually, we have to extend this line and draw a line and find the intersecting point. So this edge is the place where my handle meets with my cylindrical part. And this is the curve that I will be seeing. And afterwards I can add other small details such as radiuses. If I'm going to add radius, I have to decide the size of that radius. So it's going to be about that much. And afterwards, I can curve those edges. And maybe if I want, I can blend these edges. Okay, so that's how we're going to combine this rectilinear form with the cylindrical form, same as what we did with the electric kettle, but this time in a horizontal axis. So now we can start our sketching our hair dryer. And as I said, first let's analyze the proportions. It's going to be, the body part is going to be longer than the handle part. So in this case, I'm using 3 units, and the height of my handle is about 2 units. It's slightly angled, so it's not perfect rectangle. In order to do that, what I'm doing is I'm just drawing the complete rectangle as I did here, and from there I'm trimming it. And it's kind of truncated, it narrows down, the front bit is going to be smaller, and the handle part is going to be the widest point. So, and then I'm going to reflect those proportions on my perspective. So I guess we are ready to start. Okay, let's get a new piece of paper. So I will start with this part. What I'm doing is I'm deciding the perspective of my ellipse. So I will quickly test that. So I'm drawing a square planar and finding its center points. And afterwards, my ellipse has to touch those edges here. So this is going to be the center point, the middle point. This is going to be parallel to those lines. And I will place my ellipse right in that box. And based on that bounding box, I will find the direction of my handle. So it's going to be parallel to this line here. It should go to that direction. Okay. Otherwise, if it's not consistent with that one, if your line, that handle is going to different direction, let's say up that way, your hair dryer won't look natural. So that is why if you're struggling to find how the perspective of your cylinder, what I recommend is drawing that bounding box and place your ellipse inside that box, and using those edges of your bounding box decide the direction of that rectangular surface. So basically this is what I did over here. So I created the bounding box first and decided how wide my ellipse is going to look, and then place my ellipse here, and based on those edges I'm drawing my handle, which are all parallel to that bounding box. Okay, so if you're confused, you can do that step, but if you're sure, sure about how it's going to look like, how wide it's going to look like, the perspective of that ellipse, then you can skip that step, which most sketchers do. And based on that one, you don't have to create another bounding box, because we already know that if it's this wide, this part is going to appear slightly wider. So we don't have to do that. All right. As always, I'm starting with the center axis. It's going to be going that direction. And checking my proportions. So the back part is going to be slightly smaller, and there's an indent over here, so about 1 centimeter. And then the handle part is going to be thick, but the body part is going to be the thickest. There's a part line here, and the front part is going to get smaller. So this is the part where the air vent is going to be. And it gets wider over here. Maybe we can shrink that a little bit. And the handle is going to be that thick. Again, it's perpendicular. And it's going to be flat. And the front part is going to get smaller. And it's going to be that long, maybe even longer. So that can be the part line, and this can be the front bit. Let's see. And I'm going to combine them with a nice smooth curve. So first it's going to be this one, then it's going to be flat here, and then slightly curved. Okay. Now it's time to place the ellipses. So I'm going to see about that much. The proportion is going to be roughly 3 by 1, so 3 units wide and long and 1 unit wide. That's the amount of surface that I will be seeing that is going to be visible. So first of all, I will put my hand here. So it's going to be roughly that much. And then this part is going to be similar to that one in terms of proportions, but only slightly getting wider. And this part, same thing. It's slowly getting wider. Although over here it's getting smaller, my ellipse has to get wider. And the front part is going to look almost like a circle. This part is going to be flat. I'm keeping it lighter because light is coming from top left. Keeping this part a little bit light because I'm going to add more lines here. But this part is going to appear dark because of the direction of the light. And moreover, as I said, I have a surface that is inside here, about a centimeter. And it's going to be about a centimeter, so that it's going to be here. And I'm going to offset this ellipse up here. So it's going to be offset of this one. Okay, let's see. I guess we are done with the body part. As you can see, it's that simple. And we're going to decide the direction of the handle. So from here, it's going that direction. So it's kind of going this way. And it will be, the width of my handle is going to be this much. So I'm going to use these center points as a reference. Starting with this one. Okay, so it's going that way. And this is the intersecting point, intersecting edge. And I will, based on that edge, I will decide the width of my handle, the length of my handle. So if it's that big, it's 3 units, it's going to be smaller than that one, which is going to be roughly here. And moreover, it's going to be slightly tilted. The front part is almost vertical, but the back part is going to be slightly angled. So it should be somewhere here. And front part is going to be slightly angled, but not much. But the back part is going to be more angled. Okay, so I have the handle, the center axis of the handle, and from here I can decide the width of my handle, how thick it's going to be. Again, from here, it's going to have a varying thickness. So at the top, it's going to be wider, and towards the bottom, it's going to get smaller. That's what I'm going to do here. So over here, it's going to be a nice wide handle. Always find those intersecting points. So my perpendicular, not perpendicular, the vertical line is intersecting up here. This is my ellipse, and down here it's intersecting down there. And in this edge, it's going to be smaller than that one. Maybe it's going to be that much. And I can draw straight line connecting those edges. So here. Now I will draw a line that is parallel to this center axis and find the intersecting point over here. And draw a vertical line. And do the same thing here. Get those corners and draw a parallel line to those center axes of that handle. Still use construction lines because we're going to add more details, such as we're going to add radiuses. Then we can add the line weights later on. Now I have the top corner and that intersecting point, and I'm going to join those two dots. Okay, so I got the rough shape of my handle. Maybe I can fix that angle here. And what else I can do? I can maybe add a radius as I did here. So it's not just sharp edge, it's blended. And I have to decide the size of that radius. Over here, it's going to be about a centimeter, same as this one. That's where my blend will start. And that's where my blend will finish. And afterwards, with the help of a small tangent curve, I'm joining those two lines. So they have to be nice and smooth. And I'm going to add more radiuses back here. It's going to be curved, so this part of the radius is going to be wider than this part. And I will draw vertical lines. And again, with the help of a tangent curve, I'm adding my radius. The one over here is going to be smaller. And I can trim this bit for the switch. First, I have to decide how much I'm going to trim, how deep it's going to be. About that much, even a bit more. And I'm going to create an angled surface here. And down there. Now I will place that switch. It's going to be a simple rectangular box. And it's going that same direction. In order to get parallel, what you can do is you can still make a nice long lines and then trim it. And this side, this surface is going to be visible. So it's going to look like a small triangle, but still it's going to be visible. Don't forget that detail. And we have the switch. We can decide the place for our logo. And it can be where our radius starts. It can be that point. And the cord part. And I will place a circle here and decide the length of the truncated cone. Again, it's going to be perpendicular to this one. So what else? What are the details? We have the part line. I guess we're almost done with the oval shape. Maybe we can blend this part as we did with that top part. And add the line weight here. Maybe I can darken this part line. And make it more visible. This is not going to be a part line, it's going to be an inner contour line. So it's not going to be dark as that one, but I can slightly darken that line so that it's visible. And there's going to be another inner contour line down here. Okay, I guess I have my details, and I will add the shadow later on. And let's see, we have the material thickness, and maybe we can add the radius here later on when we are shading it. And okay, I guess we're ready. All right, I have to decide my colors. In this design, I'm using YG91, the olive green, and the orange color, and BG10 over here. And underlay colors, the standard ones, T1, T3, T5, T7, and T9 for the shadow, and maybe black to darken further for the core part as well. So let's get the black. Apart from that, we need white pencil and black pencil and correction pen or white ink pen. So once you have the colors, before you begin, always test the underlay colors. And I'm getting T1 and T3 and T5. So this is one layer of T5. Then two layers of T3, one layer of T3, and T1, two layers of T1, and one layer of T1. And I'm testing those underlay colors, those gray colors, with my olive green color. So that's one layer of YG91. So as you can see, one layer of T1 won't be visible with YG91, and T5 will be pretty dark for YG91. Maybe for two layers, it should be fine. It should be acceptable, but if you're going to use only one layer of olive green color, then that T5 will appear very strong. And for the BG10, it seems like both colors are working. One layer of T1 and two layers of T1, so they're visible. But probably for T3 and T5, that will be pretty dark. Okay, so over here, that's how I decide the underlay colors. If it's two layers of white olive green color, then it's okay to use T5. But if you're going to use only one layer, then the recommended range is using two layers of T1 or two layers of T3 maximum. And for BG10, it's going to be only T1 because T3 will be pretty strong for that. And in the next step, we will see the direction of the light. So from the shadows, from the line weights, you can understand that the light is coming from top left, more closer to the top. So that is why I will be highlighting this surface over here and that surface, but the other parts will be darker, appearing pretty dark. So it's going to be T5 or T3 here. And then the top part will be untouched. And maybe I will have highlights on the edges here. So same over here with the metal part. So it's going to be highlighted. It has to be consistent with my here, the plastic part. It has to be highlighted on the same surface, same axis. And towards the edges, it gets darker. And with the metal part, the reason that I'm making this part darker is it's acting like a mirror and reflecting its own shadow. So as you know, the light is coming from top left. That's why it will cast a shadow down here. And as a result, that shadow should reflect on this surface here. And since it's a reflective object, it's a metal object, towards the edges, it will be slightly highlighted. It shouldn't be pitch black, it should be slightly highlighted, but overall it should reflect that shadow. And then this will be my horizon line. So this is where the table ends, the surface ends, and then the clear blue sky starts. In a clear blue day sky, you will realize that towards the horizon, the sky gets whiter, and towards the top, it will look more blue. So that is why I'm putting a couple of layers of blue here, and towards the horizon, I'm leaving it blank and fading it out. Okay, so you will have more blue here, and then fade out towards the horizon. And I'm not rendering starting from the edge. I'm leaving it a little of blank space. So that's a common rule with the reflective objects. Okay, and to create that gradient effect, to put more emphasis on that, I'm using T1 in the first part, and then the rest is just BG10. So let's start with T1. Make sure that your lines are parallel to your edges. It shouldn't be straight. It should follow that curve. And I will leave a small blank space. And trying to create that gradient look with T1. Over here, I'm going to use T3, but first I can use T1. And on top of that, I'm going to use T3 because T1 is not visible with YG91, the olive green color. The part line will have a small radius on the plastic part. This part, it will eventually fade out, and this part it will be darker, and that's going to be T3. But before that, I will start with T1. Since it's on the center axis, it's going to appear almost flat. And try to create that gradient look. And don't go over that radius part because your radius is facing up. That's why it's going to be highlighted. And quickly before it dries, you can apply T3. And to blend it further, I'm applying more T1. And I'm going to have a sharp horizon line. I'm going to use my paper to mask that, or if it's going to be curved, then don't use any paper. I will start with T3 this time, and I will go all the way down. I will fade out, but my sharp line will appear on where the radius is. And I will try to fade out. With T5. And a little bit of T7. Because that will be the reflection of the shadow. I will get T5 and blend some of that T7. Okay, so remember, the reason that this part is dark is because of that shadow that this metal piece is casting. And there's a part line, so probably the part line, that part is going to appear a bit darker. And maybe a small radius in the front will appear darker because it's facing right hand side. I'll get T5, darken a bit further. So this part is facing down, and that is why it's going to appear darker with maybe T5 and combination of T3. So I will leave a white space here, and then with my T3, I'll darken this part. With T1 I can blend it. And with T5 I can add more reflections. And this side, it's going to be the opposite of this reflection that I found. This part is going to appear darker and this part is going to appear lighter because the light will be coming and hitting this inner surface here, but not the top surface. So that is why I'm getting T3. And T5. All right, so the light is coming from top left, and which means this part and this part is not going to receive enough light. And I'm going to use T3 to darken these parts, and maybe add a little bit of T5 to create that gradient. And on this edge, there's going to be a small radius. For that reason, I'm going to start right below that line. And same here. I'm using T5 to darken a bit further. And since I have going to have the same radius down here, and that radius is going to want to receive any light, therefore it's going to appear darker down here as well. And with my T3, let's kill this part. And with my T3, I will go over the edge where my radius will finish. And blend it with T1. And with T1, I will highlight where that radius starts. And add some vertical reflections. Same on the side, I'm going to have a radius, which means that part is going to appear dark. And these surfaces are going to be with T5. Okay, and maybe with T3 I can add some vertical reflections. What else? And I can add the material thickness over here, so that plastic can't be that thin. It should have some kind of thickness. And I'm using the same T3 color as I did over here because they're both that tiny little surface facing on the same direction as that one. Okay, what else we can do? Maybe that one is slightly above that switch, so it should cast its shadow on that bit of that switch. Okay, I'm going to do the black parts at the end after adding the color. I'm using as to tidy up those edges. This is source to tidy up the edges of the handle and the metal part. Okay, I'm going to start with the lightest color, the BG10. And I will just basically fade out. So I will use one layer, then add the second layer at the top, and third layer towards the middle. So, and don't go all the way to the edge. Leave some white space. Okay, so on that part, I have a little bit of BG10 over here, but don't worry about it since YG91 is darker than BG10. We will be able to cover that part. Now we can render our handle with olive green color. First time go over those edges to keep them clean. This part could be a couple of layers. And over here I will add some white reflections. And I'm applying the same gradient as my gray color. So I'm adding multiple layers of olive green color where I have T5. And this is going to be green as well. Towards the center it's going to be more highlighted. define tip sides. I'm darkening those edges where the radius is a bit further. And those are some random white reflections from the sky. Okay, so maybe more here. This will also cast its shadow on the handle bit. So I'm darkening this one more than this side. And I will render the split with black. And we have to, we're going to apply a texture here, but let's wait till it's dry. And meanwhile, we can add the shadows here, or maybe we can do the cord part and the shadow back here. And I'm going to add my shadows first with T7. Actually, I did too wide. So I did a mistake over here. My shadow is too wide, but I'll try to fix it. and it should be curved same as the top one. We're going to darken it a bit further, but for now let's leave it till it's dry. And meanwhile we can add the orange color. And the logo. And we can add our texture for the air vent part. And again, when adding the texture, try not to move your paper, and plus try to do it in one pass. I'm going to add more shadow here with T5. And the other thing is, since it's inside, probably it will cast a little bit of shadow here. And with T9, I'm going to do that. And if I want to darken a bit more, I can use black. And now the shadow bit down here. The shadow will appear much darker when it's closer to the object. And I'm going to darken that with T9. I can put my paper to get cleaner lines. Oops. I got some ink on the handle part. Let's see if we can fix that. And same over here, the shadow will appear darker. towards the object. And let's not forget to drop the shadow of the cord. And I'm going to darken a bit further with black. Okay, the other thing is, since it's like a mirror, it should reflect the handle a little bit, its color. And for that reason, I'm going to add the olive green color here, but just one layer. With T5, I'm darkening those part lines and radiuses. And if this part is dry, let's see if I can blend that with my olive green color. Let's do the cord with black. Okay, and we will get the white pencil and the black pencil to highlight this cord part. And darken. Okay, I'll get the white correction pen and highlight where the light is added. such as over here I have this white reflection. Probably this corner will receive some light. So my white ink pen is not working. Okay, so the light will be gathered here. Down here, up here on this edge, on the corners, on this contour line. Again, make sure that they're consistent with the rest of the reflections. And on this middle part, where the part line is, and we have another part line here. The radius here. Okay, so we are done. So try to remember how we combine two geometrical shapes, the rectal linear box and the cylinder. And then afterwards, make sure that the light is consistent. The top part is the lightest part, the top left, and then the other sides are going to be darker based on that. Do not forget to cast the shadows. And apart from that, with the metal part, remember that this blue part is reflection of the sky, and towards the horizon it will fade out, it will get white. And then don't forget to reflect the shadow that's on the table. And moreover, you can reflect the color of the handle on this metal part as well. And I'm going to talk about these reflections on flat surface on the next session. But the simple rule is when there's a flat surface, the reflections will appear vertical, just perfectly straight lines. So that's the general rule. And with the shadows, when it's closer to object, it will appear darker. So you can start with T7, and then afterwards you can add black towards the object to darken it. And that's about it. So I will be waiting for your wonderful sketches. And if you have any questions, just send me an email or write under the comment sections. Okay, have a wonderful day.